Captain Nathan stared at the alien planet below him. His ship, a once mighty war vessel, was now a pile of wreckage, lost in the deep space battle. He was the only survivor. The planet was unfamiliar, full of strange landscapes and towering trees. Nathan knew he had to find shelter, food, and a way to survive. His communication system was damaged, and he couldn't send a signal for help. As Nathan walked across the dusty ground, he thought about his crew. They were all gone. The ship had been ambushed by an unknown enemy, and they hadn't stood a chance. Nathan's mind raced as he tried to figure out what to do next. He was alone now, far from home, and the chances of getting rescued seemed slim. Suddenly, he heard something, movement behind him. Nathan quickly spun around, his hand going to the gun on his waist. Standing in front of him were 5 alien women. Each one looked completely different from the others. The first woman had pale green skin, long black hair, and glowing blue eyes. The second was much taller, with smooth, silver scales covering her body and eyes that seemed to shimmer with every movement. The third had skin that was almost transparent, her body glowing softly like the moon. The fourth had sharp, angular features with red tattoos running along her arms, and the fifth was covered in soft, blue fur, her eyes large and expressive. Nathan froze for a moment. He had heard stories of alien species, but nothing had prepared him for this. 5 different women from 5 completely different worlds were standing in front of him, and they were all watching him closely. The woman with glowing blue eyes spoke first. Her voice was calm, but there was an edge to it. "Who are you? What are you doing here?" she asked, her eyes narrowing. Nathan stood tall, trying to appear confident. "I'm Captain Nathan. My ship was destroyed in battle, and I crashed here. I'm the only one left." He didn't mention that he was a human, though the woman's gaze told him she had already figured it out. The woman with the silver scales stepped forward. "You're human?" she asked, her tone filled with suspicion. "Yes," Nathan replied, his voice steady. "I'm a human. I don't want any trouble. I just need help." The women exchanged glances, and for a moment, Nathan thought they might attack him. But then the woman with the glowing eyes nodded slowly. "We don't trust humans easily," she said, "but we'll give you a chance. You'll need to prove yourself." Nathan nodded. He understood. Trust didn't come easily in this galaxy, especially for a human. "I'll do whatever it takes to earn your trust," he said. The woman with the glowing skin smiled slightly. "Good. You'll need it." Over the next few days, Nathan learned that these women were not just any aliens. They were leaders of their species. Each of them had their own unique skills and abilities. The first woman with green skin was a skilled diplomat and strategist. The silver-scaled woman was a warrior, known for her strength and combat skills. The glowing one was a healer, able to mend injuries with just a touch. The one with tattoos was a scientist, always thinking of new ways to solve problems. And the last woman, covered in blue fur, was an engineer, able to fix anything with a few tools. They told Nathan that their worlds were all at war with each other. Each species had been fighting for control of the galaxy, and peace was nearly impossible. They were all survivors, like him, but they were used to fighting for their lives. Their species were powerful, but so were their enemies. As the days passed, Nathan proved himself to be more than just a survivor. He helped them with their technology, using his knowledge of human engineering to fix some of their broken systems. He worked alongside the warrior woman, learning some basic combat skills to defend himself. He listened to the healer, learning about alien medicine, and spent time with the scientist and engineer, learning how they used their advanced knowledge to survive. The women were impressed by Nathan's ability to adapt quickly. His calm, confident attitude and willingness to help made him stand out. Over time, they began to trust him more and more, and he found himself growing closer to them. One evening, as they sat around a campfire, Nathan couldn't help but feel a deep connection to each of the women. They had all shared their stories with him, stories of loss, survival, and hope. They had all lost their families in the war, and now they were seeking refuge on this strange planet. The warrior woman, whose name was Kira, looked at Nathan as the firelight danced in her eyes. "You're different from the humans we've known," she said softly. Nathan smiled. "I'm just trying to survive. Same as you." Kira nodded. "Maybe we can survive together." Nathan felt a sudden warmth in his chest. In that moment, he realized something he hadn't expected. He wasn't just surviving anymore. He was beginning to care for these women, each in her own way. The next morning, as the group prepared to move forward, Nathan found himself in a new kind of situation. The 5 women had come to trust him, and he knew that he was no longer just a human stranded on a planet. He was part of something much bigger now, a group of survivors, bound together by their strength, their losses, and their hopes for a better future. But Nathan had no idea what the future truly held. The path ahead was uncertain, and the dangers they would face together were just beginning to reveal themselves. Growing closer. Over the next few weeks, Captain Nathan worked hard alongside the 5 alien women. Every day, they learned more about each other, and slowly, the walls between them began to fall. What started as simple trust grew into something deeper. Nathan knew he had found something special, but he never expected how close they would all become. Nathan had spent many long hours with Kira, the warrior. She taught him the basics of combat, how to defend himself in this dangerous world. Her hands were strong, and her movements were quick and precise. She showed Nathan how to use a blade and the alien weapons that the women carried. At first, Nathan felt awkward, unsure of himself, but Kira was patient. She never laughed at his mistakes, but instead helped him get better. "You're learning fast," Kira said one evening after they had finished training. The sun was setting, casting an orange glow across the planet's sky. Nathan wiped the sweat from his forehead and smiled. "Thanks to you. I don't think I would have lasted long out here without your help." Kira nodded, but there was something in her eyes, something more than just respect. Nathan couldn't explain it, but he felt it too. There was a connection between them, something deeper than just being survivors. As they spent more time together, they began to talk more, share stories of their pasts. Kira's world had been torn apart by war, and she had lost everyone she cared about. Her eyes were full of sadness, but Nathan could see a spark of hope there too. "You're different," Kira said one day as they sat together, watching the stars. "You fight not just to survive, but because you care. Most humans don't care about anything other than themselves. But you care about us." Nathan didn't know what to say. He had never thought of himself as someone special, just someone trying to survive. But being with Kira made him see things differently. He felt a deep sense of duty to protect her and the others. Across the campfire, the healer woman, Aria, was speaking with the glowing-skinned woman, Lyra. Nathan had noticed the bond between them too. Aria was kind, always taking care of the group, mending wounds, and helping with any sickness that came their way. Lyra was quiet, reserved, but there was an undeniable strength in her. One evening, as Nathan walked by, he overheard their conversation. "Do you think he understands?" Lyra asked softly, her glowing skin shimmering in the firelight. Aria looked up at Nathan, then back at Lyra. "I think he does. He's been through a lot. He's stronger than he looks." Nathan felt a strange feeling rise in his chest. He wasn't sure if it was pride or something else, but it made his heart beat faster. It was clear that these women, each with their own unique strengths, were beginning to rely on him as much as he relied on them. And then there was Sarah, the alien with the blue fur. She had a quiet presence, always working with the machines and technology. She could fix anything with a few tools, and Nathan admired her skill. But there was something else about her. She would often catch him watching her when she worked, and there was a softness in her eyes whenever their gazes met. Sarah was different from the others. She wasn't as open about her feelings, but Nathan could tell she was starting to care for him in her own way. One evening, as Sarah worked on fixing a broken piece of equipment, Nathan approached her. "You're really good at that," he said, trying to start a conversation. Sarah looked up, her large, bright eyes meeting his. A faint smile crossed her lips. "It's just a skill," she said softly, going back to her work. Nathan sat down beside her. "I don't know how you do it. I can barely fix a simple engine, let alone all of this." Sarah didn't respond at first, but then she set the tools down and turned to face him. "Maybe you just need time," she said. "We all have things to learn. You're learning how to fight. I'm learning how to trust." Her words hit Nathan hard. He realized that while they were all teaching each other survival skills, they were also teaching each other how to trust again. That night, after another long day of work, the 5 women and Nathan gathered around the campfire. The stars were bright above, and for the first time since he'd crashed on this planet, Nathan felt at peace. He looked around at the women, who were no longer just strangers but a team. They had all come from different worlds, different battles, but now they were united in a way that Nathan could not explain. Kira smiled at him. "You're a good man, Nathan. You've proven that over and over." Nathan looked at each of the women, Kira, Aria, Lyra, Sarah, and the 5th, the one with the tattoos, called Zora. He felt something stir inside him, something he had never expected. It was more than gratitude. It was connection. It was love. "I couldn't have made it without all of you," Nathan said softly, looking at them all. Zora, who had been quiet until now, looked up and gave a small nod. "We make a good team." Nathan smiled. For the first time in a long time, he wasn't alone. He had found a family, one he never expected but desperately needed. The bonds they had built weren't just about survival anymore. They were about trust, love, and the hope that together they could face whatever the future held. As the fire crackled and the night deepened, Nathan realized that this strange planet and the women he had come to care for were no longer just his rescue. They were his future. Strange changes begin. It had been several weeks since Captain Nathan had crashed on the alien planet. He had become close to the 5 women, and they had become more than just companions. They had become his family. Each day, they grew stronger as a team, learning from one another and surviving together. But Nathan started to notice something strange. It began with the women. They had been spending more time together, sharing their experiences and learning about each other's species. At first, Nathan thought nothing of it. But soon, he realized that the women were behaving differently. Their bodies were changing. It started with Kira, the warrior. Nathan first noticed it during their training session. They were practicing hand-to-hand combat, but Kira seemed distracted. Normally, she was focused and fast, but today, she was slower, her movements more deliberate. As they finished their practice, she wiped the sweat from her brow and looked at him, her expression a little worried. "Is everything okay, Kira?" Nathan asked, concern in his voice. Kira smiled, though it was faint. "I'm just a little off. I've been feeling strange lately, tired, weaker than usual. I don't understand why." Nathan frowned. "Maybe you're overworking yourself. You've been pushing hard in training." Kira shook her head. "No, it's something else. It's like my body is changing." Nathan didn't know what to say. He had no experience with alien biology, and he certainly wasn't prepared for anything like this. But he could see that something was happening to her, something that wasn't normal. Over the next few days, the changes didn't stop. Kira wasn't the only one feeling strange. Aria, the healer, was also acting differently. She wasn't as energetic as before. Her skin seemed to glow a little more than usual, and she complained of dizziness. Lyra, the glowing-skinned alien, began to show signs of exhaustion. Even Sarah, the engineer with the blue fur, appeared tired and restless. One evening, as they sat around the campfire, Nathan couldn't help but ask the question that had been on his mind. "What's going on with all of you? You're all acting strange." The women exchanged uneasy glances. It was Lyra who spoke first. "We don't fully understand it, Nathan," she said, her voice serious. "Our species is complex, but something is happening to us. It's not just a simple illness. It feels like something is changing within us." Sarah looked down at her hands, her fur bristling slightly. "We've all noticed it. It's like our bodies are preparing for something." Nathan felt a chill run down his spine. "Preparing for what?" "We're not sure," Kira replied. "But it's something our species has experienced before. It's a kind of biological shift. We don't know how it happens, but we've heard stories from our elders. It's different for each species, but it always leads to something major." Nathan stared at them, trying to make sense of what they were saying. He had no idea what they meant, but it was clear that whatever was happening was not something simple. This was beyond anything he had ever dealt with. As the days passed, the women's symptoms grew stronger. Kira started to have strange cravings for foods she had never eaten before. Aria's skin began to shimmer more brightly, and she spoke in soft whispers that Nathan couldn't understand. Lyra's movements were slower, and she often looked lost in thought, as if she were somewhere else. Sarah spent hours working on the technology, but she seemed distracted, her mind elsewhere. One morning, Nathan woke up to find the women gathered together in the center of their camp. They were speaking in low voices, their faces serious. When they saw him, they all turned toward him. "Nathan," Kira began, "we need to talk." Nathan stood up and walked over to them, his heart pounding. "What's going on?" "We think it's happening," Aria said, her voice soft but filled with urgency. "The changes are not just physical. We believe we are becoming something else." Sarah nodded. "It's hard to explain, but it's like our bodies are preparing to create new life. Our species are capable of merging in ways that humans can't understand. But we believe that our changes are linked to something much bigger than just us." Nathan's mind raced. "Are you telling me that you're pregnant?" The women looked at each other, then nodded slowly. "Yes," Lyra said, "but it's not the same as how humans reproduce. This is different. It's a bonding of species. When two beings from different worlds come together, the result is something unique." Nathan's heart skipped a beat. He hadn't expected this. He had become close to each of the women, but the idea that they were all carrying something that was part human and part alien, was overwhelming. He had no idea what this meant for them or for him. "We don't know what this means yet," Kira added, "but we wanted to tell you. You've been a part of this, Nathan. Whatever happens next, you're involved." Nathan felt a wave of emotion wash over him. He was confused, scared, but at the same time, there was a strange sense of pride. He had never imagined that his presence on this alien planet would lead to something like this. But now, as the women stood together, each of them carrying a new life, he realized that their bond had grown into something far more powerful than survival. He took a deep breath and nodded. "I'm with you. Whatever happens, we'll face it together." The women smiled, a sense of relief in their eyes. The future was uncertain, but for the first time since he had crashed on this strange planet, Nathan didn't feel alone. They were all in this together. The first babies are born. Days turned into weeks, and the strange changes in the 5 alien women continued. Their bodies were shifting, preparing for something neither Nathan nor the women fully understood. Tension hung in the air. Everyone knew that something important was happening, but no one could explain what would come next. Nathan had never expected to be in a situation like this. He had crash-landed on a strange planet, alone, without hope. But now he was part of something much bigger. The women, each so different from the others, had become his family. And now, they were all waiting for something none of them could control. It was the middle of the night when it happened. Nathan had been sleeping in his small tent, a few feet away from the women's camp. He had grown accustomed to their quiet conversations and the way they moved around each other. But tonight, something felt different. He woke up with a start, his heart racing, as if he could sense that something important was about to happen. He stepped out of his tent and walked toward the campfire, where Kira, Aria, Lyra, Sarah, and Zora were gathered. They were all sitting around the fire, their faces pale, their bodies tense. Nathan could see the fear in their eyes. They were in the final stages of whatever this change was, and now they were all waiting for the birth. Nathan took a deep breath and stepped forward. "What's happening?" he asked softly. Kira, the warrior, looked up at him with tired eyes. "It's starting. We don't know how long it will take, but it's happening." The women had explained to him that the process was different for each species. Some of them would give birth to offspring that were part human, part alien. They didn't know how this would work or how the babies would look, but they knew that it was something that couldn't be stopped. Suddenly, there was a sharp gasp from Aria, the healer. She stood up quickly, her glowing skin shimmering in the moonlight. "It's time," she exclaimed. Before Nathan could react, the women moved into action. Kira, ever the leader, directed everyone to stay calm and follow her instructions. Aria began to move around the camp, setting up a small makeshift area where the births would take place. Lyra, who had been quiet for most of the day, now looked focused and determined. She stepped forward, holding a bundle of strange materials that would be used to help with the birth. Sarah, the engineer, was the first to sit down in the center of the circle, looking more calm than anyone had expected. Her fur bristled slightly as she adjusted herself, her hands resting gently on her stomach. Zara, who had been studying the planet's plants for medicinal purposes, handed over some herbs to Aria, who mixed them into a liquid. "This should ease the pain," Aria said, offering it to Sarah. Sarah nodded and drank the liquid quickly, her body relaxing as the effects took over. The air was thick with tension. Nathan stood nearby, unsure of what to do. He felt helpless, watching as the women did everything they could to prepare for the birth. He had seen humans give birth before, but this was something completely different. His heart raced as he tried to process everything happening around him. Hours passed, but finally, it was Kira who gave the first sign that the birth was near. She gasped, her body tense with the effort. Nathan could hear the sound of her breathing quickening, and it was clear that the time had come for the first child to be born. Kira's face was covered with sweat, her body trembling, but she kept her focus. The others helped her, offering words of encouragement, touching her arms gently to comfort her. Nathan watched, fascinated, but also nervous. He wasn't sure what to expect, but the women were so strong, so determined. Then, with one final cry of effort, Kira's body relaxed, and a small alien baby was born. The baby was unlike anything Nathan had ever seen. It was small with glowing skin like Lyra, but it had human-like features. The baby's eyes were large and black, and its body seemed to shimmer with a soft, blue glow. Kira smiled through her exhaustion, her eyes filled with pride. She held the baby close to her chest, her hands shaking. "It's a boy," she whispered, her voice weak but filled with wonder. The others crowded around, their faces filled with awe and excitement. Aria, the healer, took the baby gently from Kira's arms, checking him over quickly to make sure he was healthy. "He's perfect," Aria said with a soft smile. "He's healthy. We need to start planning for the future," Kira said, her voice steady and strong. "We've built a home here, but we need more than that. We need to make sure our children grow up in a safe place. We need to find a way to communicate with the rest of the world, to find others who might help us." The women nodded in agreement, and Nathan felt a deep sense of respect for Kira. She had always been a leader, but now she was leading with a vision for the future. Her determination was contagious, and it inspired everyone around her. "I agree," Aria, the healer, said. "We can't stay hidden forever. We have to find out what's out there. The universe is a big place, and we need to be ready." Lyra, who had been quieter in the past, spoke up. "What if we find other dangers? What if we face more enemies? Kira nodded. We'll be ready for them. We've survived this long because we've worked together. We need to keep doing that. Sarah, the engineer, added, I've been working on a communication device. It's not perfect yet, but we might be able to send a signal, a message to anyone who's out there. Nathan watched the women, amazed by their strength and unity. They weren't just surviving anymore. They were planning, building, and preparing for the future. And he too was becoming a part of that plan. Kira had included him in the conversation, asked for his thoughts and opinions. It was clear that he was no longer just an outsider. He was part of this team, part of this family. As the days went on, it became clear that the women were becoming the leaders of this new world. Kira, with her warrior spirit, took charge of defense. Arya, with her healing skills, became the caretaker, ensuring everyone stayed healthy. Lyra, with her knowledge of their alien world, became the strategist, helping to guide the group in the right direction. Sarah, with her technical skills, became the builder, fixing their tools and creating new ones to make their lives easier. And Zara, the one with the knowledge of plants, began to teach the group how to grow food and use the planet's natural resources. But as the women took on their new roles, Nathan found himself struggling with his own place. He had always been a leader in his human world, but here, on this strange planet, he wasn't sure where he fit. The women had become the heart of their new community, and Nathan wasn't sure if he was meant to lead with them or follow their lead. It was one evening, as he sat by the fire, that Kira approached him. Her expression was serious, but there was a warmth in her eyes. Nathan, she said softly, you've been with us since the beginning. You've helped us, and you've been strong when we needed you. You're not just one of us. You're part of this family. You've shown us that humans have strength we didn't know about. You've taught us things we didn't understand. Nathan looked up at her, surprised by her words. I don't know if I'm a leader, Kira. I don't have the skills you all have. You don't have to have the same skills, Kira said with a smile. What you have is something different. You have a heart that cares. You have a strength that inspires us. You've been our equal in every way. And that makes you a leader, Nathan. We need you. Nathan felt a weight lift from his shoulders as Kira's words sank in. He had been worried about not fitting in, about not having a place in this new world. But Kira was right. He had been a leader in his own way. He had led by example, by showing the women that they weren't alone. As the days went by, Nathan began to embrace his new role. He worked alongside Kira, Arya, Lyra, Sarah, and Zara, helping with the tasks they had set for the future. He worked on the communication device with Sarah, making improvements. He trained with Kira, sharpening his combat skills. And he helped Arya take care of the children, making sure they were safe and well-fed. The group had changed. They weren't just a group of survivors anymore. They were a community, a family with new leaders and new goals. And Nathan had found his place among them, not as a follower, but as an equal. One evening, as they stood around the fire, watching the stars above, Kira spoke again. We've come a long way, but this is just the beginning. We've built something strong here, and together, we will make sure it grows. Nathan smiled, looking at the faces of the women and the children around him. He had found something here. Something he hadn't known he was searching for. A family. A future. And no matter what challenges came their way, he knew they would face them together. A war to protect the family. The peace that had settled over the camp was fragile, like a delicate web. The group had worked hard to build a safe home, a place where the new life of their children could grow. But Nathan and the women knew that peace would not last forever. They had made enemies. Enemies who saw the mixture of human and alien blood as a threat. It started with small signs. Strange lights appeared in the sky at night, flashing in patterns that no one could understand. Kira, ever the warrior, noticed the changes first. She had been watching the stars, learning to read their movements as they had done on their home planet. But these lights were different. They were a warning. "We're not alone," Kira said, her voice low as she spoke to Nathan and the others one evening. "Someone is watching us." The group gathered around the campfire, the air thick with tension. Kira explained what she had seen, and soon they all realized that the enemy had found them. A sense of fear began to settle over the camp. They had built a life here, but now it was in danger. "They'll come for us," Arya said quietly, her eyes filled with concern. "We've made too many enemies by existing. Our children are unlike anything anyone has ever seen." Sarah, the engineer, added, "We've prepared for this. We've built defenses, and we've got weapons, but we don't know who's out there or how strong they are." Nathan looked at the women, their faces grim but determined. They had come so far, and they weren't going to let anything threaten their family. The babies, their children, had to be protected at all costs. "We'll fight if we have to," Nathan said, his voice firm. "But we need a plan." The next few days were filled with preparation. Kira led the training for defense, teaching everyone how to fight, how to use weapons, and how to protect their home. Arya focused on caring for the injured, readying herself to tend to anyone who would be hurt in the coming battle. Lyra spent hours studying the stars, trying to figure out where the enemy might come from. Sarah worked on the communication device, hoping to send out a signal to anyone who could help them. The enemy's arrival came faster than they had expected. One night, as the camp was settling down, they heard the unmistakable sound of ships in the sky. The ground trembled beneath their feet as the enemy ships landed on the planet's surface. Kira's hand tightened around her weapon as she looked to Nathan and the others. "They're here," Kira said, her voice cold but steady. Nathan's heart pounded in his chest, but he forced himself to stay calm. "Get ready." The women took their positions around the camp, each one prepared to protect the children. Nathan stood with Kira, his eyes scanning the darkness. The enemy had arrived, and they had no choice but to fight. Then, from the shadows, the enemy appeared. They were tall and armored, their faces hidden behind masks. They moved quickly, silently, as if they had trained for this moment. They were here to take the planet, to wipe out anyone who stood in their way. The first few shots rang out, breaking the silence of the night. Kira moved like a shadow, her body quick and precise as she took down the first of the attackers. The others followed her lead, each of them fighting with everything they had. Nathan stood close to them, ready to defend the camp with his life. The battle raged for hours. The enemy was strong, but the women were stronger. They fought together, side by side, protecting their family and their home. Arya healed the wounded, Lyra outsmarted the enemy, and Sarah created traps that slowed them down. Nathan fought alongside Kira, his combat skills coming to the forefront. He had learned so much from the women, and now it was time to put that knowledge to use. The enemy kept coming, but they hadn't expected this level of resistance. The women were fierce, and Nathan was determined. Each time one of the attackers fell, the others hesitated. The fight was not going the way they had planned. But then they made their move. A large group of enemies broke through the defenses, aiming straight for the center of the camp. It was the most dangerous moment yet. Kira called out to the others, rallying them to defend the children. "Protect the children," Kira shouted. The women turned their attention to the center of the camp, where the babies were hidden in a secure shelter. Nathan knew that they couldn't let the enemy get close to them. The battle had shifted. Now, it wasn't just about fighting back. It was about keeping their family safe. The women fought with everything they had, but the enemy was relentless. They were closing in on the shelter, and there wasn't much time left. Nathan rushed toward the attackers, his heart racing. He knew that he had to do something, anything, to stop them. With one final push, the group of enemies was pushed back. Kira led the charge, her strength overwhelming them. Arya's healing touch kept the women strong, and Sarah's quick thinking created traps that trapped the remaining attackers. After what felt like an eternity, the last of the enemy soldiers fell. The battle was over. Silence fell over the camp. The women stood together, bruised and bloody but victorious. Nathan stood beside them, his heart swelling with pride. They had done it. They had protected their family. As the sun began to rise, casting light on the battlefield, Kira turned to Nathan, a smile on her face. "We did it," she said softly. Nathan nodded, his voice filled with emotion. Together. The war had been fierce, but they had survived. And now, more than ever, they knew that they were stronger together. Their family was safe. For now. But the war had taught them one thing. They would always fight to protect the ones they loved. A new beginning. The battle was over, but the fight to protect their family was far from finished. After the enemy had been driven off, the camp was left in ruins. Tents were torn, weapons were broken, and the ground was scared from the battle. But the people who had survived, the women and their children, stood tall. They had won, and they would rebuild. The sun was beginning to rise, casting its warm light over the camp. The survivors gathered together, looking at what was left. Nathan stood with Kira, Arya, Lyra, Sarah, and Zara. Their faces were tired, their clothes torn, but their eyes shone with determination. They had fought hard, and they had won. Kira was the first to speak. "We've lost a lot," she said, her voice steady but full of emotion. "But we've also gained so much. Our family is still here, and we'll rebuild." Everyone nodded, agreeing with her. The battle had been hard, but it had brought them closer together. The enemy had come to destroy them, but they had fought back with strength and unity. And now, they had a new sense of purpose. Lyra stepped forward, her face serious but hopeful. "We need to move fast. The enemy might come back, or others might find us. We need to be ready." Sarah nodded. "I've been working on building new defenses. It'll take time, but we'll have more protection this time. We can't afford to be caught off guard again." Arya looked at the children, who were all safe and sound in the shelter. "We'll need more supplies," she said. "Food, medicine, everything. We can't rely on what's left here. We'll have to go out and find more." Nathan looked around at the group, a sense of pride swelling in his chest. These women weren't just survivors. They were leaders. They had turned a broken camp into a stronghold, and they had done it together. "We'll do whatever it takes," Nathan said, his voice full of conviction. "But we're not alone anymore. We have each other, and we have the children." Kira smiled, a rare moment of softness in her eyes. "You're right. We have our family, and that's all that matters." The days that followed were filled with hard work. The women led the rebuilding efforts, while Nathan helped wherever he could. They worked together to restore their home, gathering what supplies they could and strengthening their defenses. Sarah's new communication device, though still imperfect, began to send signals into the universe, hoping to find someone who could help them. Arya worked with the children, teaching them how to be strong and resourceful. Lyra and Zara studied the stars, searching for any signs of danger or allies. They learned how to live in harmony with the planet, growing food and using its resources to survive. The bond between the women and Nathan had only deepened after the battle. They had fought side by side, and now they trusted each other more than ever. They had been through so much together, and they knew that as long as they stayed united, there was nothing they couldn't face. But even as they rebuilt, they knew the threat of more enemies was still out there. The communication device kept sending out signals, but no reply had come. Nathan had hoped for help, but he wasn't sure if anyone would hear them. The universe was vast, and it felt so far away. One evening, as Nathan sat by the fire, Kira approached him. She looked thoughtful, as if weighing something heavy on her mind. "What's on your mind?" Nathan asked, looking up at her. Kira took a deep breath before answering. "I've been thinking about what comes next. We've rebuilt, and we've made it through. But we can't keep hiding forever. We have to move forward. We need to find a place where we can grow and thrive. A place where our children can have a future. Nathan nodded slowly. I agree, but we need to be careful. The enemy won't stop coming. And we don't know who else is out there. We'll be ready, Kira said firmly. But we can't stay in hiding forever. Our family deserves more than that. They deserve a chance to live without fear. Nathan felt a weight lift from his shoulders. He had always feared that the safety they had fought for would be temporary. But Kira was right. They couldn't live in constant fear. They had to take the next step, to build a future not just for themselves, but for their children. The next day, the group gathered again. They sat around the fire, discussing their plans for the future. Kira's idea was simple but bold. They would leave the camp and search for a new home, a place where they could grow without the constant threat of danger. The planet they had settled on was beautiful, but it wasn't enough. They needed more. They needed peace. We'll need to travel, Sarah said. We've got the tools we need, and we can keep moving while we search for a better place. But it'll take time. That's fine, Arya said. We've been patient. We've already made it this far. We can do it. The group was ready. They had rebuilt their home. They had survived the worst. And now they were ready for something more. They were ready for a new beginning. As the sun set behind them, casting its golden light across the land, Nathan felt a sense of hope rise within him. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about living, about building something new. And with the women by his side, he knew they could do it. Together, they would face whatever the universe threw at them. Together, they would build a new home, a place where their family could thrive. This was just the beginning.